On June 17, 2025, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy wrote in a note to employees that he expects Amazon to reduce its overall corporate workforce in the coming years due to efficiency gains from the widespread deployment of AI across the company. This caused a bit of a stir, not because nobody expects AI to eventually take over some human jobs, but because this was the first time that a major US corporation told its employees point blank that AI is coming for your jobs. Which is pretty serious coming from one of the US's biggest employers, at least for now. And while this may have been the first memo of its kind, it certainly won't be the last. Industry leaders in banking, tech, and even consumer goods are all talking about how to leverage AI to streamline their payrolls. A January 2025 WEF survey found that 41% of surveyed companies plans on using AI to downsize their workforces. And if we extrapolate this trend forward a couple of decades, we could be staring at a future where human labor is increasingly, well, useless. Or maybe all this AI automation talk is just fear-mongering and historically irresponsible hype. I mean, we survived major technological advances in the past. Why would this time be any different? And the world that these technological advances lead to is usually much better than the previous one. Maybe even always better. Does anyone remember the anti-electricity movement? So all the people swearing that this time will be different are just gonna be as wrong as they always are, right? Well, it's really tough to say, but it's also really important to think about. So today we'll be looking at some arguments for these different visions of the future of work, so you can decide which one you think is most likely to occur and, well, prepare accordingly. So let's lay some groundwork. I think it's obvious to everybody that we're currently at the cusp of a technological revolution thanks to AI. Maybe a little bit past the cusp. In 2014, Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee dubbed the AI era the second machine age, and Klaus Schwab dubbed it the fourth industrial revolution. But whatever we want to call it, the bottom line is that advancements in AI have the capacity to completely revolutionize the way we all live. AI is poised to make life safer, more convenient, efficient, and productive. But all these benefits come at a cost. With each passing day, AI grows more and more capable and available to the general population, in both personal and commercial settings. But human skill levels remain just about the same, or even getting worse if you look at education statistics. And thanks to global demographic challenges, there might even be fewer of us in the coming decades and centuries. So the unsettling possibility is that in the not-so-distant future, the remaining human beings might become economically obsolete, having been utterly outcompeted by their robot counterparts. At least on the productive side of the economy. They'll still need people to buy stuff, but that's another issue. It's the idea that we'll reach a point as a species where technology permanently displaces a large proportion of the working population. In the literature, it's called massive technological unemployment, or MTU. And although it's gotten more attention recently thanks to advances in AI, the idea actually goes back about a century. In the 1930s, the economist John Maynard Keynes wrote about the possibility of widespread unemployment due to our discovery of means of economizing the use of labor, outrunning the pace at which we can find new uses of labor. In other words, he postulated that we might be able to automate more jobs than we can create new ones for the newly unemployed workers, at least at a rate that is faster than us to maintain something like a 40-hour work week for most of the adult population. Keynes actually predicted that we would level off at about a 15-hour work week due to technological advances. And again, he was writing in the 1930s. But in the intervening decades since then, technology has completely revolutionized human life more than once. And yet here we are, still overworked, underpaid, and highly medicated, working 40 to 60 hours a week, some of us. We went from horse and buggies to rocket ships in a period of about 50 years, and everybody still has jobs. So it looks like Keynes was completely wrong. And the question is if he's going to stay wrong. Some researchers still believe that it's just a matter of time before MTU actually happens, while others, we'll call them optimists, believe that the fact that MTU hasn't happened yet is pretty good evidence that it's not going to happen, even in the face of massive technological advances due to AI or some other technology that we haven't yet discovered. We'll start by looking at these more optimistic arguments in detail before moving back to the pessimistic take. So, optimists about MTU with respect to AI just believe that it's yet another technological innovation that will completely revolutionize the world, but our economy will eventually metabolize, just like the steam engine, electricity, or the internet. AI might change the nature of work for a lot of people, some jobs will become obsolete, and there might even be some economic transition growing pains. But eventually, at the end of the day, human labor is always going to be required in human life. In fact, if history is anything to go by, we'll probably be working harder than ever alongside our robot companions rather than be outright replaced by them. And the main reason for believing this is just that it's always happened this way. Even if AI ends up taking many of the jobs that we know and hate today, we'll just invent new ones like we always do. So proclaiming the end of human work in the face of AI automation just represents a failure of imagination and historical illiteracy. We shouldn't use the fact that we can't think of any AI proof jobs at the moment to conclude that those jobs will never exist. It's also a failure of imagination to assume that the future of work will be reduced to a simple choice between a human and a robot, and not the fascinating space in between of AI augmented humans. This is the possibility emphasized by the cautiously optimistic Bartek Chemansky, who argues that human AI collaboration rather than AI replacement will actually provide the model of economic value to lead us through the future. On this view, the dominant model of AI use will be human enhancement rather than human replacement. And so it won't be an AI taking your job directly, it'll just be a human with an AI implant, or a human who knows how to use AI much better than you. And this is already happening. That same WEF report I mentioned earlier also claims that 77% of major corporations surveyed are planning on upskilling their existing workforce to work with AI better. So AI will just become another tool that you have to learn how to use as a worker, and it'll just be mostly business as usual as we invent new jobs to replace the jobs that are being automated by AI. And again, for the optimistic view, looking at history is crucial. Economies have survived massive restructurings before, even if there were some growing pains along the way. And when the dust settles, usually the world is better off than it was before. The most recent example of this happening in my lifetime isn't actually due to technological displacement, but displacement due to globalization and the China shock. Both of these things really exploded during the 1990s and ended up devastating communities across the industrialized world that have still yet to recover and perhaps never will. Manufacturing jobs left those places and they're never coming back, at least not without massive reindustrialization efforts. And while this has led to one or several crises, right now in 2025, the unemployment rate is sitting at about 4%. And that's more or less been considered normal up till the 90s and ever since then, barring some acute crises. So neither technological innovation nor globalization has led to a massive, persistent unemployment crisis. The economy has just readjusted. So the AI economic transition will be messy and people will lose their jobs, but just like always, the economy will recover, even if it takes a generation. So, for the economically and historically minded, a healthy skepticism might be warranted regarding the possibility of massive technological unemployment due to AI automation. Other experts are far less optimistic and believe that this time really is different, and AI automation really poses an existential threat to the value of human labor. These experts believe that we're headed towards a world in which robots do pretty much all the economically valuable work, and humans are just going to need to find another way to support themselves and occupy their time. Now, regardless of whether that might be a good thing or a bad thing, the question for now is why the pessimism? Why think that this time will actually be different? Why doubt that we'll be able to metabolize this technological revolution just like all the others? Well, there are two main reasons. The first is the kind of jobs that AI is capable of doing, namely, all of them. Like, literally, all of the jobs. For pretty much any job you can think of, an AI program or an AI powered robot will be able to do that job better than a human in a matter of years. And the list of exceptions or AI proof jobs is getting smaller every day. And this is a major difference. In past technological or industrial revolutions, the automation was limited to taking jobs that were in manual labor. Think copyists losing out to the printing press. But AI can increasingly automate cognitive and even creative labor. And when you put the possibility of widespread physical labor automation and cognitive labor automation in the form of AI powered robots, then pretty much anything is possible. Sky's the limit. And it's all just a matter of time before robots can do literally any job better than a human. Not even highly technical jobs like performing surgery or creating art. Jobs that were long thought to be completely immune from the possibility of robot automation are safe anymore. These were things long believed that a robot would never be able to do, and yet here we are. And if robots can do all those things, why would any company ever hire a human being to do them? Because not only are robots going to do those things, they're going to do them better than we could. They're going to do so with lower maintenance, for lower costs, without needing breaks or vacations or benefits, without complaining. It just doesn't really make economic sense to hire humans when you have a robot to do the job instead. They're pretty much the ideal worker, and there's really no competition from a business standpoint. So pessimists believe that because of all this, eventually we'll reach a point where human labor is basically economically worthless. As philosopher John Danaher puts it, the causal connection between human workers and valuable outputs is going to be severed. As the overall value of human economic labor decreases, humans will inevitably be displaced in the labor pool. Now, as I said before, optimists might counter and say this is just a failure of imagination. Again, even though we can't think of any AI proof jobs right now, that's not to say we won't think of new ones in the future as new economic opportunities and maybe even industries open up. Again, we always seem to come up with enough new jobs to keep the economy and human society humming along, no matter how many jobs are taken by outsourcing or automation. So, why is this time any different? And this brings us to the second major reason, which is the scale and speed of AI automation being something truly unprecedented. Because even if, as the optimists say, this new technological revolution will lead to new jobs that only human beings can do, there simply won't be enough of those created quickly enough to make up for the jobs that are being lost to AI. It's a question of scale and speed. And again, we just don't stand a chance, according to the pessimists. Furthermore, even if there were jobs that temporarily required human oversight, it's again just a matter of time before human AI cooperation is replaced with fully AI workers as well. So the idea of human AI cooperation would just be one step along the way to full automation, rather than the dominant model. And with the possibility of AI programs running an increasing portion of companies and having an increasing number of responsibilities in companies, it's only reasonable to surmise that they're going to create new jobs for other AIs. And this will become more and more apparent as AI becomes more and more capable, which it is every single day. So, overall, the challenge made by the pessimists is really that any economically valuable task will eventually be able to be done by a robot. And because it can eventually be done by a robot, it will eventually be done by a robot because it'll just make more economic sense to do it that way. It won't happen tomorrow, it won't happen next week, but you'll see it more and more in the coming years and decades. And this will lead to some serious issues, according to the pessimists. But even given all that, an optimist might still say, we've been here before. So we can't yet know for sure if massive unemployment will happen. On the one hand, this might just be yet another case of partial, temporary technological displacement. On the other hand, it could lead to a massive restructuring of the economy, society, and life as we know it. Which one do you think is more likely to happen? Let me know in the comments below, definitely, because I'm really curious to see what most people are thinking about this issue. It's something a lot of us probably have intuitions about. Personally, I'm leaning towards pessimism. I think it's going to be a messy couple of decades, and this economic transition is not going to be pretty. I think there's good reason to believe that in the not so distant future, an increasing number of human beings will become economically obsolete, at least on the production side of the economy. The speed and scale of AI deployment is just going to overwhelm the economy's ability to absorb all the newly unemployed. It just won't be able to create new jobs quickly enough, at least temporarily. But temporarily might feel like an eternity if AI improves fast enough. And even temporarily, we could see massive crises and instability and inequality as a result. I mean, just think about what would happen if a large percentage of the population suddenly becomes permanently unemployed due to some advancement in AI. Entire occupations could vanish overnight, and we might be left with a much higher than average unemployment rate for a very long time. Even something like a 20% unemployment rate would be incredibly destabilizing for society. And then what? Taking this more pessimistic, at least near term possibility seriously leads to all sorts of questions that we'll have to deal with, even if the pessimists' worst long term fears aren't realized. If an entire industry vanishes overnight, that's not the sort of thing that gets fixed in a couple of years. You can't exactly reskill people who have been training to do a single job or a single set of jobs their entire careers. It will take a generation to recover, and that's going to lead to a really messy interim period where we're going to have to deal with some pretty hard questions. I mean, are we going to need something like a basic income guarantee or a universal basic income to prevent societal collapse? Or should we try and manually slow the rate of automation by punishing or taxing corporations that automate too much too quickly? We might even need to just dramatically reimagine society in general to accommodate a human population, a large proportion of which is not economically productive. We might wonder if this post work, technologically advanced society is something that we actually want. I mean, it might be awesome if it's set up the right way, and that's a big if, granted. But still, it could be something to strive for and look forward to. I know plenty of people who would be thrilled to never work another day in their lives and have plenty to do to keep busy if they're not working. But on the other hand, if people don't work, then society could end up in an oppressive, miserable nightmare world where people are unable to support themselves. But these are all topics for future videos, and I hope you'll be watching as we explore them. But today I just wanted to rehearse the possibilities and get you thinking about the possibility of a life without work and the future of work in general. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. And if you found it interesting, be sure to like and subscribe for more Frank Philosophy.